So hi guys, welcome back. You're visiting Ponderings from Palm Coast. I'm Mark Webb. And today I have a special guest, a good friend of mine. You may have seen him on Conversations with American Democracy that we do as a group, Al Kramer. And I brought Al in today, and we want to kind of talk a little bit about some things that are happening now, today, and some thoughts on that. So, Al, before we get going, I always kind of ask, you're not from Palm Coast, are you?
No one is from Palm Coast.
My point exactly. So tell us how you got here.
Well, it all started in California in 1949. I could skip through a lot of it, but about 5 years ago, I had some housing come into question in New York. I'm a New Yorker. I'm the New Yorker that all the Floridians don't want to come here. They don't want things to change, and I try and point out to them that we have elections, and they're about if we didn't want change, we wouldn't need elections. We would just keep the people that we had. But anyway, I'm that guy. And about 5 years ago, we had to change our housing, and financially, I could have afforded to stay in New York, which I love. But when I looked at the lifestyle that I could be afforded in this area of Florida, I chose to have a house on the water and a boat and all the rest of that, which I wouldn't be able to get near in New York. So that's actually what brought me here. It was financial. I was aware of the fact that Florida in general, and this area more specifically, was quite red. But 5 years ago, I don't think the implication of that was quite as severe as it is now. And so I'm feeling a little bit of that.
So you've been here about 5 years?
I've been here about 5 years.
Okay.
And during that time, as Mark mentioned, I decided that if I wanted to complain about things, I should be more active. I have never been politically active in my life. And about 3 years ago, I got involved with knocking on doors for the elections and Americans United for Separation of Church and State and things of that nature. That I felt it gave me some legitimacy in voicing my opinions.
Well, yeah, being active and participating in issues is important, and it is satisfying. And you can feel, for me, I never wanted to be or feel any regret after an election occurred. Well, whoever gets elected over the last many years that I've been involved, I at least could say I participated. And that's really important when half our country doesn't even vote. I mean, it drives me mad when I hear all of these online hiding behind fake names talking about, well, the majority of the people of this country voted for the Trump that we have now, the president we have now. No. Well, that's not true, because the majority of the people didn't even vote for anybody. And that says a lot about what's going on. But today, right now, what's happening is we are once again involving ourselves with international actions and things that are going on. And I know that you have a strong opinion on that. So are you happy that we took military action the other day?
I thought I was going to be. And up until about a week ago, I would have strongly supported the United States getting involved to the level that they were involved. I certainly appreciated the defense of Israel that was going on in terms of Patriot missiles and so forth. But to actively get involved in the conflict in Iran, I would say 10 days ago, I would have been jumping up and down and saying, yes, yes, yes. And the more I spoke to people that I respect and listened and read about the implications of our getting involved with this, I don't want to. I won't say that I turned around on my opinion that we should have acted militarily, but I am saying it was very, very complicated, and my reservation comes from the fact that I'm not convinced that it will generate the results that we think it will generate. Curbing Iran's nuclear aspirations, I think, is a wonderful thing to do. I have a pet peeve when it comes to political discussions, and it came up in one. Actually, the guy who used it, and I thought he was using some false logic, said some other things that really convinced me. And it was at one of our other meetings, and he said, well, if I were a country, I would want nuclear weapons. And to me, that's an absolute false equivalence, because what you're saying is one country is like another country, and they're not. Israel having a nuclear weapon and Iran having a nuclear weapon, if you think that's the same thing, I would have a long way to go to convince you that it's different. But Israel is not a supporter of international terrorism, and I think North Korea having a nuclear weapon is not the same thing as France having a nuclear weapon. It's a false equality. So he said that, and my immediate reaction was to discount anything else that he said. But he also said that, talked about the fact that they wouldn't be inhibited from buying a nuclear weapon off the shelf. Russia has been their good buddy for a long time. And certainly North Korea could be approached. And there are other ways that they could respond, and that response might necessarily be coming if we had not got involved. And so I'm willing to think about this much more deeply than I would have 2 weeks ago.
So you're saying, I think, it's not about having a nuclear weapon. It's about the belief of how it could be used. Is that the driving decision on whether, and you referenced France and North Korea or Israel, which has never confirmed that it has a nuclear. I was reading this today.
That's right.
To learn, because now I'm just thirsty to understand this whole situation. And though everyone in the world believes they have one, they even crashed a plane out in the desert and quietly went and got the plane back, never confirmed that they have it. But for the record, they have never confirmed.
That's right.
That they have a nuclear weapon, and yet their concern is, some say, that Iran having a nuclear weapon is completely different because the fear of how it's used. Is that part of it?
That's part of it. I think that's part of it. Look, I don't think there are many people in Israel that think if they die killing a Palestinian, they're going to go to heaven and be celebrated. No. And so there are people on the Iranian side that strap bombs onto themselves because they believe they're going to go to a better place, and it's the thing to do. Well, if you just bring that up to the top level, I mean, they've always said that their mission is to destroy Israel, and they've never changed from that. That Israel is not a legitimate state, which is an interesting idea in of itself. The United States has California and Texas because we took it. Israel was created because the world voted that they should have a place. Who has more legitimacy? Well,
we do live in a country that is the only country that has used
That's right.
an atomic weapon.
Right.
And we used it thinking that it would force peace by strength. And a lot of people don't understand this, but you can verify it. Even after the second bomb was dropped in Japan, the Japanese military refused to surrender. They would not surrender. They were willing to fight to the man based on their belief. And it took their emperor to step in and order the military to stand down for the sake of the culture. And the emperor was the one that signed the peace documents. So this strength by force has not really, in my mind, as a military guy, and I've been around the world and I've walked through and I've seen things, and you've got countries that are run by just brutal dictators. Is that peace by strength? Some will say that when we toppled Hussein in Iraq, we caused the House of Cards to collapse because they had found a peace by strength scenario that worked for them. Well, it's happening right now in Afghanistan with the Taliban. We signed a treaty. Who was it that signed that treaty? I don't think it was Biden. It was the guy before Biden, signed a treaty that we would leave Afghanistan and let the Taliban run their country the way they wanted to. I don't think many people are really happy about how the Taliban is running Afghanistan now, but it's peace through strength. How does that equate to what some fear we have in our country today? As you're an undocumented person going to work, don't go to Home Depot because peace through strength, they're going to come and grab you up. But I do want to stay, and I've kind of moved away because I see the link in a lot of this. Do you think we can stop Iran from buying a nuclear weapon? Is it reality that we can do that? The world?
I don't know, and that's why I'm not as happy about the decision that I might have been previously. Because even if it's not a nuclear weapon, let's say, and look, I believe that they did have nuclear ambitions. They say they don't, and there is no proof that they did. Tulsi Gabbard, not one of my favorite people, the head of national security, said they were not developing a nuclear weapon.
But that's not the first time that Trump has totally poo-pooed all of the experts around him.
Right.
He did it in his first term when he was talking to Putin about some issues that were happening. And he said, well, I asked Putin about it, and he said he didn't do any of that, so I believe him over my 15,000 experts that were saying differently,
Right.
of which he just did again. But
So that is a very ominous echo back to Iraq. I mean, we went in there to get rid of all their weapons of mass destruction that weren't there. So
yeah, I thought about that with the Bush years of fear and organization and efforts and lives and money for nothing. So let me say it this way. Do you blame Iran for not wanting to have a nuclear weapon as like the guy was saying in the meeting you were talking about, is to try to equal the playing field of recognition?
I don't blame any country that would want to aspire to strengthen its military.
Right. So is now that the defensive posture that every...
But that's again, putting it in a vacuum
Oh.
and saying that Iran's desire for a nuclear weapon is the same as Britain's desire for a nuclear weapon, and I don't think it is.
I agree. And we don't know, and my wife hates it when I say it, we don't know what we don't know. But what we do ask, what happens tomorrow? And I've been watching this document series on Turning Points on Netflix, and it talks about nuclear weapon and the Cold War. And there was a really interesting episode talking about John F. Kennedy and the Cuban Missile Crisis, right? So there were all these missiles in Cuba, and we assumed that there were nuclear weapons on every one 90 miles from Florida. And everyone around him was telling him, bomb them, destroy them, sink the ships. And he asked them all one question. So what happens the next day? What happens the next? Tell me what will happen the next day. Well, we don't know. Retaliation? On the news this morning, there's been at least 470 times where strikes have been done on other countries by our presidents without informing Congress.
There hasn't been a request for a declaration of war since 1942.
Yeah. Is it wrong? Sure. Should they share? Sure. But I will say it's been very consistent that there is no security out of the Trump administration. We all know the Secretary of Defense has chat on Signal with everybody and their brother. So by keeping it down to a minimum of 3 or 4 people to get this done and protect our military during decided action, I think is justifiable because leaks and conversations. But I also would say to you, in my mind anyway, I believe that we could have flown and broadcast it to the world in the middle of the day, flown over there, done this and come back, and Iran wouldn't have been able to do or wouldn't have done anything to stop it. The Israelis have done a phenomenal job of taking out all the air defenses. When they announce that the sky is ours, and Trump took credit for we now own the skies, that meant every plane, every op, every sortie, whatever you want to call it, could safely fly anywhere over Iran at freedom without endangerment. So I'm amazed at the extent of this secret planning of stealth planes going in different directions. You know, it's kind of like they're flying over Russia or somebody who doesn't have that. But it's really an interesting conversation. And this goes back to what I was saying about, well, what happens the next day? Now they're talking about the price of the gasoline that we're going to be paying here in the next week or two may go to, you know, what is it now? $3. It'll go to $4 a gallon. My wife read a text to me from Trump this morning in big bold. Do not raise the price of fuel in America. I'm watching.
That should work.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Everybody's going to say, oh, Trump says we're not going to raise the price of gasoline in Palm Coast. So it's interesting that you were exposed to everything's happened, kind of digested everything that was going on. Because I know as a Jewish man and a school teacher that you're probably more educated than most in understanding maybe the history or the concept or the challenges that Israel has faced its entire existence. If there's one country that has always had one foot in the potential of a war with its neighbors and others, it's Israel. And I've often said the worst mistake a country can make is pick a fight with Israel. Because history has shown you're not only going to lose, you're going to lose bad.
Their military expertise has been non-parallel. The '67 war, even they didn't believe that in the first 30 minutes of the war they destroyed 50% of Egypt's air power. The first 30 minutes. Now, some historians argue that it took an hour. That's the extent of the discussion. Interestingly, in terms of history that brings us here, embryonically, Israel was a perfect communist state. They lived in communes. Everyone was dedicated to one thing, building a country in the middle of a desert where there was nothing. And so they had this single-minded unity. When you talk about communism and in its purest form, the children didn't live with the families. The mom and dad lived in these barracks, and the kids lived over here and were educated. I mean, it was pure communism. And if you look into the concepts of communism, of course, many of them are very noble, but in the real world, capitalism seems to work better because it works with people. But in that period of time, you had a group of people that were so single-minded and all headed in the same direction that it did work for quite a while. They were relatively open-minded at that point in time and very, very liberal. But over the years, with their relationships with their surrounding neighbors, the country has moved increasingly to the right. Many people will probably not know that Israel is 75 to 80% secular. I'm going to say that again. 75 to 85% of Jews will say they're Jewish, but they're not practicing Jews, meaning ethnically they're Jewish, but as far as God goes, not so sure. Okay? Now, what has happened there, I think, which is very, very interesting in terms of why, again, I'm uncomfortable about this whole relationship with Iran and everything, is the religious right in Israel are fundamentalists, just as you have fundamentalists in the Islamic countries. You've probably seen them personally or around with the long hair, locks of hair, and the big hats, and the beards, they want to live the way the Bible said you should live 1,000 years ago, and they try and live by those tenets and not having moved it up to this point. They make up about 20% of Israel. They're in control of Israel now, just the way MAGA is in control of the United States now. So that Israel, basically a noble country, a democratic country, the only one there in the Middle East, the United States' staunchest ally in the Middle East, has progressively moved to the right and is now controlled by the right because Netanyahu needed to form a government that would keep him out of jail. And the only way he could do it was by giving tons of power to these religious fanatics. And so that is why it's very, very careful to make a delineation between what's happening in Gaza and the West Bank and what's happening in Iran. There are two totally different issues. One stems from, I think, Israel's legitimate belief that a nuclear Iran is not in their best interest. And the other one in the Sinai is Netanyahu will extend that war as long as he possibly can so that he doesn't have to face justice. And so knowing that is what's in control of Israel and knowing who's in control of the military of the United States now makes me uncomfortable with decisions because I know who's making the decisions in Israel, and I know I disagree with them. In the United States, I think it's just whether Trump feels like the wind is blowing to the left or the right, or I think a lot of his agenda is simply causing chaos. And this was a great way. I mean, chaos benefits him. Oh, I can take care of it. I can fix it. I'm the only one. Oh, you can't do this. You can't. Oh, it's terrible. It's hard. This is the worst that ever. There's never been anything like that. I can take care of it. So part of me thinks this is part of all of that. He does have an intelligence community that he could rely on, but they're talking about turning into a Fox News clip because he doesn't read. So you can hand him an intelligence report that maybe took 5,000 hours to put together by 200 people, and he doesn't look at it. So I mean, this is the guy that decided to get us involved. So I have to wonder. So I can't simply say, I think that it was a good idea and I'm glad he did it without looking at his motives and what surrounded his ideas for doing it.
Yeah, I think once again, I've always looked back at the conflicts. Like you said, we haven't been in war since 1940 something. But in the conflicts we got into, my view of the history is we got into these conflicts for good reasons, the spread of communism, whatever. But we fought the war as we have always tried to fight the war. This isn't that. Israel is trying to fight the war the best they know how with the ballistic missiles and the missiles back and forth. They're almost 1,000 miles apart. Iraq's in the middle. You're not going to send armies or tanks or whatever.
Syria's in the middle.
Well, Syria and Iraq. And
Right.
there's several countries
Yeah.
in the middle, but for the last many, many years, Iran has fought or made itself felt by the use of proxies that are the Houthis and the people in Gaza, the Hezbollah and others, that they have funneled their efforts and support to so that they didn't or couldn't generate the type of army that we now have. And sadly, we know from 9/11 that that is a very hard thing to defend. And when the Iranian leader says every American is a target, every American, do we consider those consequences? What do we do the day after when we're dealing with a country, or not even just a country, but a belief, a mindset that they can, and you even pointed on this earlier, they have such loyal, committed soldiers that are living amongst us and have for years, that are fully prepared to arm up and walk into your mall, your school, your church, where there are Americans gathering, and fight the battle at that level. We don't know how to protect ourselves from this. Doing the action of the other day, I believe, hastens that activity. And unfortunately, the destruction or the focus on how to protect us in our neighborhoods, I think, is worse today since Trump was elected than before, because the focus, I was just reading the other day, right now, sheriffs are pulling people over right here in Palm Coast on the auspice of speeding or whatever, checking for citizenship. Do you think they're checking to see if you've got 20 AKs in the back and you're going to the church down the street? Because that's where the focus is. That's where the focus in America is. That's where every law enforcement agency is focusing with ICE and focusing with all of these things, because that's the direction. And yet now we've possibly punched a beehive, Iran, that has shown they have the ability. I got to tell you, I don't know a single American soldier or anybody I know of so loyalty to our country and belief that they would be willing to blow themselves up for Trump. Maybe they would. So where do we go from here? What do you think's going to happen? What's in your mind now that we've stepped into it?
Well, this trade-off, I think you spelled it out pretty well, and that is the question that I was saying in terms of what information Trump is getting is the buttons that Iran can push. One of them, of course, is domestic terrorism inside of our country. And whatever the threat level was before, it's higher now. And so I would like to think that somebody smarter than I weighed those two issues and said, a nuclear Iran is more of a threat than what they can do with their proxies. But I have no confidence that that took place in making this decision. So normally, I would lean back on my president and my country and say, what we don't know. The intelligence community has come up with this, and that I'm going to have to be more vigilant, and I'm going to have to be more careful, because they've done this in what they think protects me more than the threat that comes up. But once again, with the administration that we have now, I don't believe that took place. I think it just happened. And now I think in terms of what we have to do, I think we have to be careful and we have to keep our head up. Like when we went out on No Kings, and I was a little more cautious on that day than I was in previous days when I went out and demonstrated. And I think, unfortunately, we're all going to have to keep our eyes open in the supermarket and in houses of worship and so forth. I think hopefully, not because it was thought out, but I think Iran might realize that the powers that be in the United States now might make them pay a very, very heavy price if they push that button.
Right.
The whole idea of mutual destruction in terms of Russia and the United States having nuclear weapons, China, that whole thing can happen at a lower level too, right? I mean, I want to strike back at the United States, so do I send a rocket into one of their military installations, or do I shoot up a house of worship? If you shoot up a house of worship in the United States and it gets drawn back to Iran, I can't imagine what the response of the U.S. would be. So I think if they realize that, and I think they do, that might protect us a little bit.
Yeah, you touch on that, but I heard two things earlier, and it's all over all the news. There was something that impressed me. Iran, North Korea are one of the only two countries today that build safe rooms in every structure and home they build. And Israel.
Mm-hmm.
Think about that for a minute. In Israel, every location, every kibbutz, every little village has a designated area that is bomb-proof, gun-proof, protected. Do you think about that in your home? Do you even consider right now in America, where would you go in your home to protect yourself if someone's knocking on your door that wants to do you harm, right? And the other thing is Hezbollah in Gaza. You see the horrendous pictures and how there's not even hardly any one standing structure there anymore. It's been obliterated. 1 million starving people, the innocence of the people in Palestine that had very little to do with it other than what their perceived leadership in Hezbollah that did the action in October. And yet they haven't surrendered. They've never agreed to any long-term terms to, what is it Trump asked the citizens of Iran? Unconditional surrender? And you look at what the belief, the core belief and understanding of that society, that the Muslim community in Palestine, they have been obliterated. They have been destroyed to the point their own people are starving, and yet the military arm of that group hasn't budged a bit. So I have little faith that if we did the same thing to Iran, it would change anything. That the Iranian military regime, the military army, the Republican Guard, would tolerate and understand those people, the citizens every day, are sacrificial for the greater good of what they believe in. Because just go look at Gaza. Do you see how that strength in peace cannot really possibly bear out what they think when you've obliterated the Palestinians. There's nothing left there, and yet are they going to quit? Are they going to give up? Never. They're never going to give up. And I don't think that Israel would either. If it was the other side and they were being pounded and obliterated, the last thing they're going to do is quit and give up and surrender. It was an interesting concept that I believe that there's a limit in military actions. We learned that lesson in North Korea, ended in a stalemate. We couldn't beat them, so we just found a happy spot. We lost in Vietnam. We couldn't change the mindset or get the people to fight. We lost in Afghanistan. The Afghanistani people were given multiple opportunities to step up and run their country and make it better, and they couldn't or wouldn't. And we lost American lives. We spent billions of dollars. So I don't know what the answer is, but I don't think the fear, for me personally, taking actions that may or may not stop Iran from getting the bomb has consequences that I don't think anybody has perceived.
That just goes back to the original question. Did that action make us safer? That's the question.
Yeah.
Am I safer today than I was 2 days ago before we bombed Iran?
That's a really good question.
And many of the things that we spoke about today are implications to try and get to that answer, but I don't think we're going to be able to answer that. But I think if you're an intelligent person, you want to roll those things around in your head.
Right.
Am I safer? Yes, because they would be afraid of a further strike from the United States. No, because they are now being pushed. One journalist said that a wounded, cornered dog is more dangerous than the well-fed, happy dog. So you have wounded them and cornered them, and either they're going to stay in their little corner and whimper, or they're going to react. And I think we're just going to have to wait and see what what the result is. I would be shocked if the Khomeini administration did not have some kind of response.
Oh, well, the next day, Israel flew sortie missions over Iran, continuing to attack targets.
Mm-hmm. Oh, well, it's not.
But wait a minute. But he said, the day that we know that their nuclear program is decimated, we'll stop. That's all we're really after. We blow the mountain into oblivion. Their words, not mine. And the very next day, Israel's still flying sorties over Iran.
The military experts are saying that Israel, over the short term now, will try and take advantage of the fact of their air superiority at this point and to try and degrade Iran as much as they possibly can. They're saying hopefully over a short-term period.
Sure.
Because they took the chances of what they took to create the situation now where they can walk all over the country if they want to. I would be very cautious as a Jew. I would not like. I think regime change is a possibility in Iran. What I know of the Iranian people is that they are cultural, that they are, for the large part, educated, and I think it would be a big mistake for Israel and or the United States to have their bombs going off in residential areas.
Right.
I think if they limit it to military installations, they still have a possibility of capturing hearts and minds. It's never worked very well in the past, but I would hope that there's a faction in Iran that is not happy with this theocracy. They had a period, where the women their hair was flowing and they were wearing Versace and their economy was vibrant. I'm sure a lot of them remember that. So I hope that by refraining from injuring too many civilians, we would have a chance at regime change.
Well, history has shown that the people of Iran have numerous times rised up against their leaders. The Shah was one of them because of criminal activities, other things. I was just watching a phenomenal documentary about the history of Iran and how it got here. And in multiple cases, millions of Iranians took to the street, fought, and died. I mean, thousands of Iranian citizens went up against the military and were just slaughtered, and yet they kept coming and they forced the change. They got rid of the Shah. They brought Khomeini back as a change. Now, maybe it wasn't what they wanted, but every dictatorship, I won't say most regime changes occur when the population, the people, decide to get out there, protest, wave signs, get organized. We're seeing some of that now, to voice their problems with how the government, and in every case, there's been a change. It's been amazing. Al, any last thoughts, man? Anything you want to share, talk about?
We did Terranova pizza. I think I don't have to go over that again.
That was good.
Yeah. I had some good sushi last night, but it's a little bit of a drive.
Huh.
Green papaya in St. Augustine.
Huh. Never heard of
There
it.
you have it.
That's great.
I mean, I figured we could end up with something important.
Well, and there's a lot of things going on here in the city, a lot of things happening, and stay tuned to things that are going on. I want to remind you to like and subscribe. We've now got a Facebook page, Ponderings, from Palm Coast, and we'll be trying to grow the channel and inform you and have conversations like this. And as always, please make your comments if you have views or opinions or whatever. I love reading them. I love participating in the dialogue of what's happened, because just like what we're talking about, education and understanding makes us all better and smarter. So thanks for coming by. I look forward to talking to you next time.